What's up, everybody? My name is Tyler Stans, and this is What's Playing Tonight, the show where I'm currently confronting childhood superhero movie trauma. And the road to No Way Home continues with Sam Raimi's 2007 masterpiece, Spider-Man 3.
See you, chump. What the hell?
So I thought I'd try something interesting with this video. Spider-Man 3 actually has two cuts, the theatrical cut and the editor's cut. And I watched both of them because I hate myself. I'm aware that there's an alternate cut of Spider-Man 2 called Spider-Man 2.1, but seeing as that's a near-perfect movie already, I didn't bother with it for the last video. I'm more interested in seeing if the editor's cut has fixed Spider-Man 3 or not, but I will get to that later. We have most of the players returning from the first two movies, with the exception of Alfred Molina, obviously, and boy has the writing taken a real dip this time around. Sam and Ivan Raimi, along with Alvin Sargent, have turned our beloved characters into some of the most annoying, insufferable people that I've ever had the misfortune of watching on screen. The relationship between Peter and MJ comes across as toxic and unrealistic. Toby and Kirsten do well with what they're given, but it doesn't really save the movie. So in this movie, we get to see the black suit storyline. I know a lot of people have problems with how it's handled, but I'm more forgiving on it. The suit, or symbiote, doesn't necessarily make the wearer evil. It only makes them aggressive and takes away their inhibitions. Peter basically turns into an arrogant ladies' man, or at least what he believes a ladies' man to act like. So I have no problem with it, or how it's portrayed. If anything, it's given us the Bully Maguire memes, which I enjoy immensely. The writers did not know how to write MJ. The way she acts in this movie is so petty and combative that it makes her an unlikable character. We're talking CW levels of writing here. She gets upset when critics don't like her singing, so naturally, she takes it out on Peter and shuts him down when he tries to help. Now, when she gets mad at him for kissing Gwen during the Spider-Man festival, the Key to the City thing, that's entirely justified. Peter shouldn't have done that. It was really stupid, and he really should have been more considerate of her feelings there. Harry's actions are unbelievable in this movie. Knowing that Spider-Man killed your father and then finding out your best friend is Spider-Man would certainly cause some friction between the two of them. Finding out that your father was the Green Goblin, I feel, would have had to have led to some sort of conversation between the two of them. There's just some information there that I feel like would have caused Harry and Peter to at least try to talk things out in the 3 years that have been since Spider-Man 2. Assuming that this movie takes place 3 years after Spider-Man 2. It came out 3 years, so I'm just going to assume that it takes place 3 years after. But no, Harry sits on this hatred for years, never talking things through with Peter, and gasses himself up with some good old-fashioned goblin gas, and decides to be a supervillain. Also, just something I noticed during my second watch, why would Harry go to the Spider-Man festival in the first place? So, in this movie, Harry tries to kill Peter, and he ends up knocking his head on several things. Actually, Harry knocks his head on several things in this movie in general. He's always knocking his head. But the accident causes him to develop short-term memory loss. Or at least that's what the doctor claims it is. So, we're talking short-term memory loss here. Like, he didn't remember his fight with Peter. That makes sense. But short-term memory loss, as I understand it, does not erase years of memory. If he remembers that his father is dead, then surely he remembers how he died. Killed by Spider-Man, or at least that's how he understood the situation. So why would Harry Osborn, who hates Spider-Man, even go to the Spider-Man festival thing in the first place? It's just something I noticed. Aunt May is back, and her and Uncle Ben were apparently very good swimmers.
We were very good swimmers.
I don't have anything else to say about that. Good on them, I guess. The Daily Bugle folks are back as well, but I don't have anything interesting to say about them either. We've had 3 movies with these people, and they pretty much do the same thing in every movie. But it is time to talk about some of the newcomers, and I'll start with the easiest one to talk about. We have Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy. Now, Gwen Stacy in the comics was Peter's first love, and she tragically died, and we'll get to talk more about her in the next couple of movies. In this movie, she exists to give MJ even more reasons to be mad at Peter. And then eventually she just disappears from the movie and we never see her again. That's all I can say about Gwen Stacy. She was there to cause more friction between Peter and MJ, and then she's gone. So this movie has 3 villains, and it doesn't handle having multiple villains quite as well as Marvel Studios would later on down the line. I already talked about Harry, so we'll talk about another one of our main villains, Thomas Hayden Church as Flint Marko, the Sandman. He is the only villain in this movie with decent motivation. His daughter is sick, and he wants to steal money to pay for medical treatment. That makes sense. However, I can't really comment on Church's performance because he's honestly not in the movie very much. He is, but he isn't. Most of his scenes are fights with Spider-Man. When he's in the movie, he's either fighting Spidey or he's fighting Spidey as a big CGI monster. Not very much characterization going on there. He also killed Uncle Ben because this movie didn't already have too many ideas. And I think that's really dumb. It adds unnecessary drama. I guess it had to... Peter needed motivation to fight Sandman beyond the fact that he's Spider-Man and Sandman is a bad guy robbing bank trucks and stuff. So they put in a dumb plot where Sandman is actually responsible for the death of Uncle Ben. Also, I like how in the flashback when he kills Uncle Ben, he's wearing the same green striped shirt that he wears for most of this movie. The same shirt that he broke into his, I guess, ex-wife's house to steal. Maybe it's his favorite shirt, I guess. Anyway, yeah. Next villain. Topher Grace portrays Eddie Brock, or Edward Brock Jr. That's right. Years before Tom Hardy, Topher Grace is the first Venom. And I know that he gets a lot of flack, but I actually like his performance for the most part. Although, much like Harry and even eventually Sandman, his motivation is hating Spider-Man. I like that he's almost the anti-Peter Parker. They're both photographers. They're both in love. Brock just is a little more confident than Peter, and he has no integrity. I actually think Topher Grace could have made a decent Spider-Man back in the day had they not chosen to go with Tobey Maguire. You know, in a weird alternate universe, I might like to see that. He jokes around a lot as Venom. I think it's dumb that most of his time as Venom is actually spent without the alien Venom face. It's just Topher's face with some bad makeup. They also didn't do anything to change his voice, so it's just his regular voice coming out of the alien Venom's mouth. Although I'm not quite a fan of how Tom Hardy's Venom sounds when he talks, but I would say that we're going to get to that eventually, but we're probably not unless he starts showing up and crossing over with the MCU, which you never know. I will say the action choreography in this movie is great. The fights are awesome and up to the standards set by the last one. The special effects hold up for the most part. The CGI is a little obvious in the fight between Peter and Harry at the beginning of the movie when Peter keeps trying to catch his ring. but that's my only real complaint on the effects. And for that matter, I can take this further. Anytime that we have to CGI Peter doing Spider-Man things, I get the point that I guess maybe Tobey Maguire wanted his face in the movie more during the fight scenes, but the CGI just looks better when it's the Spider-Man model instead of the weird Uncanny Valley CGI Tobey that they created. But other than that, like I said, I don't really have too many other complaints about that. Danny Elfman did not return to do the score for this movie. He apparently found it too difficult to work with Sam Raimi. So instead, we have Christopher Young taking over, an accomplished composer in his own right who has worked on movies such as Hellraiser and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge.
You are all my children now.
Underrated entry in that franchise that I would love to talk about someday. A lot of Elfman's music has been rearranged by Young, and he keeps the tone consistent. His contributions to the score are great. The black suit theme and his theme for the Sandman are definite highlights. As far as cameos go, I didn't notice too many. Bruce Campbell is great once again as a French host. He's not quite a waiter, I think he's more of a host of the restaurant where Peter plans to propose to MJ. I go back and forth on whether I like the French Bruce Campbell or the Usher Bruce Campbell from the last movie more. Stan Lee cameos once again and even gets to say his trademark, "Nuff said." I have to admit, I do miss seeing Stan Lee cameo in movies. I think that his cameos didn't really get too good until Marvel Studios started making their own movies. So let's talk about the editor's cut. It does not fix the movie. Some of the changes are so minuscule that you might not even notice them. There are some new scenes, but I don't think they make it the definitive version of this movie by any means. You could probably take both cuts and add the good stuff from both of them and try to piece together a decent movie, and you'd still mostly have this turd of a movie that already exists. There's some great stuff in Spider-Man 3. I really think that they almost made a good movie, but they tried to put way too much into it, and it leaves the film feeling overstuffed and overly complicated. Trimming some fat, spending more time to develop the characters would really do this movie some good. And maybe just rewriting the entire relationship between Peter and MJ, because that's just garbage. In my opinion, Spider-Man 3 is only good for the memes, and I give it 1 lone tie out of 4. Which might be my lowest rating yet. Well, that concludes the Raimi trilogy. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. We will be hopping universes into a good old-fashioned reboot next time. If you like the video, consider liking the video. If you like me, how about subscribing and even clicking on that bell icon? And leave me a comment below and tell me what you think of Spider-Man 3. Love it or hate it, it's certainly a movie. I'm Tyler Stans, and this is What's Playing Tonight, and I'll talk to you guys later.